Coming up on TekThing, Samsung S7 hands-on Echo takes over, super routers, color lasers, SD card, secret surge protector, surprise, Eero, and more. All coming up on TekThing. If you get something useful out of this episode of TekThing, please consider contributing to the show at patreon.com/TekThing. We're brought to you by viewers just like you. Thank you so much.
I'm Shannon Morse.
And I'm Patrick Norton.
And this is TekThing, where we make technology behave.
At least on the good days.
All the good days. Hey, guess what? It is a good day for me because I got new glasses.
Aww.
I know, right?
I got my first pair of
awesome?
reading glasses last week, too.
Aww.
They're not nearly as stylish.
Oh, yeah. Mine are totes fashionable. They're very, studious. Guess what I got?
I don't know
I
what
didn't
you got.
I didn't officially get them yet.
Guess what you pre-ordered?
I pre-ordered the Amazon Echo Dot and the Amazon Tap. So these two little guys. They come out at the end of the month, or they're actually shipping at the end of the month, but they just released last week. We got a preview pretty much.
I'm going to brazenly assume that these are devices to more firmly knit the Echo lifestyle deeper into your home.
Yes, they are.
Actually, and I'm going to call this out because, you resident hacker, resident security paranoid, even more of a tinfoil hat wearing human than I am. You have an always-on device listening to everything that is said in your home.
Yeah,
and you love it.
Yep.
You use it constantly.
So I will say it's in my kitchen, a place that I barely ever go because I never cook. So it's in a room that I don't go in very often.
You did actually have a successful toast making incident.
All the time.
I understand.
I didn't burn my toast. It's a true story. So
that's a big deal.
So off on that tangent, these are new Amazon devices that work with the Amazon Echo voice control. They were just announced last week. I'm really curious to see if the Amazon Tap, which is basically a little Bluetooth speaker, has good Bluetooth audio. So I've reviewed so many Bluetooth audio speakers in that same price range as the Amazon Tap. So I'm really curious how that works. And you actually have to physically touch it to use the voice control. Use Alexa. Sorry guys, I had to. And then we have the Echo Dot, which is basically a standalone Echo, but it's in a smaller version and it has a smaller speaker, so it's not quite the same speaker functionality.
Can you own a Dot, or do you need an Echo to use the Dots? Because the Dot looks like a satellite for an Echo.
It does. So it sounds like you can use the Dot by itself because it's going to use the Echo in any room just by itself. But the weird thing is you need to own a current Echo, the original, to be able to order this through the Echo.
Alexa, order an Echo Dot.
Oh, don't do that. Well, it's okay. You don't know anybody's passwords for that, so.
I'm sorry.
Now everybody's going to be like, thanks, Patrick.
So basically, it's the Alexa you can carry everywhere, the Echo you can carry everywhere in your house, and then the Echo Dot, which may or may not be a satellite of the Echo you already have.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure it's standalone, but I'm going to get one physically in after it ships at the end of the month to actually find out for myself.
What are the 3 things you do the most when you call out
that's easy.
Her name?
That's easy. Grocery list. So I add things to my grocery list because it's in my kitchen. I check the weather before I leave for work so I know if I need to bring an umbrella or not. And I would say the 3rd thing would be listening to music.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you actually tell it to play you a song?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say
And it works with Pandora,
again.
which is great. So
Does it
I
work
can
with Spotify?
I don't use Spotify, so I'm not sure, though I'm pretty sure it would.
Oh, wait.
Isn't that Spotify?
Yeah,
Spotify. So it works with Spotify.
It works with Spotify.
Oh, and I turn on my Wemo stuff because I ordered a few more Wemos for the household, and I just turn it on all the time. So I'm like, turn on the TV, and it goes, okay. It's great. It's so much easier. It's so much easier than having to open the app and
or pick up a remote control.
I know.
Why lean over to the other side of the couch?
I'm a lazy merkin.
You're a happy merkin.
I am.
And the NSA knows everything you do in the kitchen.
They do.
Which is very, very
Very little. Burning things.
Oh my goodness. The Wirecutter has released a new pick for best surge protector, which is nice, but I had no idea. This is a fascinating article for me. I had no idea that surge protectors wear out, literally.
Really?
Now, before you throw things at the screen thinking, we didn't know you were that stupid, Mr. Norton. And I can understand why you might react that way. But it turns out, you think of a surge protector like, the voltage spike, and it hurls itself on the voltage spike sword to save your equipment. It turns out your surge protector dies a little bit every time there's a little bit of a voltage surge. I did not know this.
I didn't know that either.
There's the picks, and then there's a whole awesome section on how surge protectors work. Basically a surge protector has a series. The surge, the extra electricity, runs into metal oxide varistors or moves. Quote, these components sacrifice a little of themselves each time they take a hit, and how much they can take over their lifespan is expressed as the joule rating of the surge protector. Oh. Many small hits or one giant one reduce or eliminate a surge protector's effectiveness. And I did not realize that your surge protector would die a little bit, but it can die one massive hit, it can die a little bit over time, but essentially surge protectors are consumables. There is some great stuff in this article about the power supply discussing power distribution from a 30-year veteran of the utility industry, the electrical engineer that did the testing, and my thanks to Mark Smirniotis, who I hope I'm saying her name right, sir, and the Wirecutter, for teaching me a ton of stuff I did not know about surge protectors, like about what happens if there's a lightning strike.
Ooh,
you know what happens? The surge protector in your equipment dies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Surge protectors don't. That picture of the lightning on the box, asmertisement, as we taught my son to say.
So moving on, Justin sums up a whole bunch of emails that we've gotten this week. He says, hi Patrick and Shannon. I have heard some hype about Eero, a new Wi-Fi mesh network advertised to homeowners. Any chance you will be testing this product? I would love to see if the marketing lives up to the real world experience. Thanks, from Justin. So I'm curious about this too, because I read about the Eero.
I stumbled across it, you stumbled across it, people started emailing us about us.
So $500 off the bat, but you get 3 of these mesh networking routers for that $500.
Okay, they call it an entirely new approach to home Wi-Fi. This is a stunning website. It is beautiful. It is well marketed. Eero essentially brings the corporate style. I can go anywhere the network reaches, and my Wi-Fi connection is gracefully handed off from WAP to WAP. Now, most DIY systems, right? They're like, oh, here's a router range extender, here's the Eero Wi-Fi system. And essentially, like Shannon said, these create a mesh network. They talk to each other. When you build a router and you put a second router on the other side of the house, they almost never gracefully hand off to each other, right? You walk the other end of the house, your connection gets worse and worse and worse, and then finally you manually flip over. Yep. So the idea of Eero is bringing corporate style. I can go anywhere in the network and everything handles just smoothly. You need a big house that you will wander around while, if you want to wander around your 5,000 square foot house or into the backyard without losing your movie on Netflix, to justify, these are $200 each, 3 for $500. Viewer Dale actually wrote in, asked if Eero would be good to replace his 4-year-old wireless N router. He's got a 1,600 square foot house. I personally would go with an 802.11 AC router like TP-Link's Archer C7. I use one at home, and A, I get excellent coverage all over the house, and B, the AC router actually made my 802.11N worth using for the first time.
Yes.
Because I always went straight to 802.11. 802.11N was great if I was in the room with the router. Yeah. And as soon as I got past some mythical distance,
it failed.
Or it just got so slow it pissed me off. So for the first time, with an 802.11 AC router, we've mentioned this before, 802.11N is actually worth using. And the router cost under $100. So, and this is for everybody except for Eero customers. Slash and burn to get your Wi-Fi router into the center of your home. Not in the basement, but up high, above a cabinet or mounted high on the wall. Not buried inside of a closet, right? Because location makes a huge difference to Wi-Fi. Because the Wi-Fi, if this is your house and you put the Wi-Fi router over here, there's a whole bunch of Wi-Fi that's not being used over here, and then this corner is lost, right? If you put the router in the middle of the house,
then you're covering more range.
If you don't put the router in a closet, that's at least 1 or 2 less layers of sheetrock it has to pound its way through.
Of course.
Getting back to Justin's original question, if you have a big house and you want to roam freely from room to room with graceful handoffs, we have confirmation. David Murphy over the Wirecutter says Eero delivers. It has he basically did a great, dense, immense amount of testing And he points out one major caveat with the Eero system. If your internet connection goes down, Eero drops its Wi-Fi signal too. So you can't, say, stream your audio collection or back up to your NAS from your laptop if you don't have your internet connection.
Interesting.
Might not be a particularly big issue. I tend to find myself, doing things at 2 or 3 in the morning when Comcast decides to take the network down. Not that they actually do very often, but it's happened a couple times in the last couple months, so I'm a little sensitive. But it is an interesting product. It is not an inexpensive product, and if you're not going to use if you're not using at least 2 or 3 of them, the word from the people who have tested it, Mr. Murphy, is that you should go with one of the other router picks.
Okay, cool.
Meanwhile, I'm going back to multi-user MIMO testing, and we will have links to that Wirecutter article in the show notes. You are amazing! Seriously, you make TekThing happen by contributing small amounts per episode via patreon.com. Crowdfunding is cool. It means we get to focus on making great content for you, our viewers, and our patrons get access to special patron-only build videos and early heads up on what's coming, and even monthly hangouts at certain levels. Go check out patreon.com/TekThing, and if you can't donate, no worries. Keep firing out your questions and tips. Write us a review on iTunes. Give our videos a thumbs up on YouTube. Share the links with your friends. It all makes the show that much stronger. Thank you so much for being a part of TekThing.
The Samsung Galaxy S7 and the S7 Edge just shipped to consumers, and since I'm always interested in the newest and the most awesomest of the Android universe, of course, I invited Darren Kitchen, my co-host from Hack5, to give me a rundown on the S7 Edge. So I'll give you your phone back.
Thank you. Shannon Morris, I've been a fan for the longest time. It's very exciting. Do I look at you or the camera? How does this work?
You can look at both.
I'm on TV.
Because we're friends with everybody that watches
Awesome.
TekThing. So you've had this new S7 Edge for a week, right?
Right. I pre-ordered it immediately the day it came out.
Okay.
I've been very excited about this upgrade because I'm going from the Note 5. Now with the S7, in fact, they have the exact same icon set because forget that TouchWiz stuff. You want to get yourself Nova Launcher. That's just from me to you. But
I'm kind of in agreement with it there with the TouchWiz.
It made the transition from one phone to the other so seamless that sometimes I forget that I even upgraded. And that's the thing about this device is going from the Note 5 at least, it's really subtle and it's kind of one of those things where it just gets out of the way some of the features that I wanted going to this phone.
So my biggest question about these is the processing power, because I know the processor changed, and the battery, because the battery increased a ton over the older phones.
Yes, moving from the S6 to the S7 line, it has a much larger 3600 milliamp hour battery. That's about 600 more than I was previously used to with the Note 5. So it is nice. I would say it's kind of not that noticeable for me, at least, because of the fast charging. I'm one of those people that tends to recharge throughout the day. And the fact that it supports fast charging, or at least Fast Charge 2.0, where it'll go up to 9 volts instead of 5, means that you can top up very quickly.
And what about the processor?
The processor is really where there's a bit of contention. I was very happy with the Note 5 CPU. So much so that I've even done video editing on this, no problem.
Yeah, so we mentioned that in a previous episode. He actually does that, and he uploads vlogs to his YouTube channel.
Right, so full 1080p, no problem doing transitions and all of that stuff. So I was hoping moving to the S7 because of the camera, which we'll talk about in a bit, and the storage, that would be a better platform for me for doing video blogs and editing. And the CPU is much different in that it depends on which version of it you get in North America, at least, because it doesn't have just a Qualcomm Snapdragon 820. It either has a Snapdragon 820 or the Samsung ENEOS 8890.
So what's the difference between the Qualcomm processor and the Samsung one?
Well, I'm so used to the Samsung processor, very happy with it. The Qualcomm, on the other hand, not as fast in multi-threaded performance. It is better in single-threaded, but the CPU isn't what the major difference is. It's really on the GPU side, and that's where there's a much bigger difference. So if you are like a hardcore gamer on your phone, you may want to actually go ahead and check the version from your carrier, because if you're getting it from AT&T versus T-Mobile, you may actually get a different CPU inside. And
that can be a little complicated.
It kind of is. Otherwise, though, I haven't been able to notice too much a difference, mainly because the application that I use to do the video editing hasn't updated for the support for this new CPU yet. So I haven't really been able to tax it. But
so
it
doesn't even work yet.
hasn't felt sluggish in any regard yet.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Now, what about the storage? The storage, I believe it's expandable again, right?
Yes, that is the number one
Awesome.
reason why I upgraded from the Note 5. I had the 32 gig version, and I was constantly running out of space on the Note 5.
Yeah, aren't
so
we
the
all?
S7, what it does is, in the same little slot where you put in your SIM card, you can go ahead and put a micro SD card up to 200 gigabytes.
200.
Which is a very odd number because it's not
very weird.
256, it's 200. I think that has to do with the file system. You know, I'm not actually sure. I haven't gotten a good answer on that.
And with the processor, you haven't noticed any issues with heating or anything like that?
That's the thing, is on paper, these guys are very different, but really it's when they get implemented that you're going to, like, the rubber meets the road. So I haven't, I haven't run enough benchmarks to be able to tell.
Okay.
I just haven't felt any significant difference with my day-to-day. And it was a seamless switch from my day-to-day on one to the other when I transferred the phone. So it's not like I'm still getting all of my applications installed or anything like that.
And I usually find that a lot of our phones nowadays, especially these top tier line phones, have very average components when it comes to speakers and camera or call settings. So what would you say about these? Is the call quality and the speaker, are they decent?
Well, they both have the speakers at the bottom, so you don't have that stereo separation where some phones will have the speakers at the top as well.
Like the Nexus 6P.
Right, which I would like if it had that, but you know, no big deal. They sound about the same.
Okay.
I was on hold for 10 minutes with Amazon the other day
Ooh, 10
on
minutes.
speakerphone, and it was fine. The call quality was.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Now, cameras.
The camera's the big difference, and that's one of the major reasons, other than storage, that I actually upgraded.
Cool.
And the difference is pretty significant when you just look at the specs alone.
Yeah.
So there's a decrease in megapixels, right? So going from the Note 5 16 megapixel to the S7 with 12 megapixel, but
I'm just
here's
going to
the
remind
thing.
everybody that megapixels are not the only thing that matter.
No, it doesn't, because the S7 lets so much more light in. It has a f1.7 lens versus an f1.9. So it doesn't sound like much, but it is a big, significant difference. And moreover, the sensor is what they're calling a dual photodiode sensor, right? It's a half-inch sensor where it has 2 pixels per pixel. I don't really quite understand all of the esoteric differences between it. They have filed a patent late last year, and it has now come to fruition. And I must say, it looks really good.
Okay.
Especially in low light. That's where you're going to notice the biggest difference.
Yeah,
that,
so
and it's a little wider. So you've got I think it's a 22 millimeter versus a 26 millimeter lens on the Note 5. So it's a much wider on the rear camera. The front camera is pretty much the same on both. They're both
great for selfies.
Yeah, they're both 5 megapixel.
Oh, does it still have beauty face?
You
That's
have
my
to
favorite.
turn off all that crap. Yes.
Okay, so you sent over some photos for me. How about you walk me through these a little bit?
Okay, so this is from the Note 5, and those are just my rugs. And you can see lots of color there versus the S7. So this is the same shot from an S7. A little bit more saturation.
Yeah, just a little bit.
I don't have them in the same aspect ratio, sorry about that, but you can see the 4:3 ones are the S7s.
Cool.
So here you can see the significant difference. This is the Note 5, and now here's the same shot. You notice it's much wider, as well as much more saturated.
Yes. Okay,
So we
outdoors.
keep going. So here's the Note 5.
Nice.
Here's the bay this morning.
Yeah, beautiful clear blue skies.
Yep. And then the bay on the S7.
Okay.
So it's a lot bluer, a lot higher saturation.
But look at, see the fog around the city? Look at the difference with the S7 Edge.
Yeah, good
Interesting.
call.
Okay.
And then, so this is just like a test of the depth of field. So this is kind of what you expect from the f1.9 on the Note 5.
Nice.
And then the S7. Here's some low light shots with Kirby, of course.
So look at this screen in the background. See how grainy that is?
Right.
This is with the Note 5 again. And then if we zoom out and look at this one, so this is in the same light setting.
Right, so it's actually more grainy, but it's actually letting more light in as well.
So the S7 Edge, would you say that wins when it comes to low light?
Well, it's brighter.
It
could also just be that the ISO is up higher, hence the higher grain. But just at first glance, and both of these, all of these shots are just in auto. to give you an idea of the difference. But yes,
Yeah,
if you're just taking a quick snapshot, you will notice that it is brighter in low light, which is that's a big deal.
Now, I just have a few more questions for you. As far as when you're typing, does the curved edges screw you up at all?
Okay, so the curved edge is the big feature about the edge variant of the S7, and
Yeah.
I'll note that it curves on both sides, but it's really only like a half curve. It doesn't go like all the way to the edge like the previous model,
Okay.
Which would only do it on one side. The other weird thing is when you very first get it, you see that? You see right there? I can kind of make it do it with the
Yes.
studio lights. That glare becomes very prominent when you first take it out of the box and you're not used to an edge display. You get used to it over time, but it's very prominent at first. The other thing that comes with the fact that it's an edge display is you get the little swipe in from the right, oops, and you can get these different cards. So there's the weather, and here's appointments, and here's some frequently used apps. So that's kind of a nice little feature where you can just swipe through those.
That's awesome.
I haven't really used it too much because I haven't had that feature before, but it is nice to like do some task switching without the traditional Alt Tab of Android. And then the other thing is that it has the edge screen allows you to do very faint right here, but you can see there's a clock, and that is.
Oh my gosh!
So it's much more
You can
noticeable
barely
at
see
night.
it.
This is what they call night clock.
That's really cool.
And basically you can choose left side or right side if you, say, leave your phone on your nightstand when you can glance over and see. Otherwise,
great.
what they're calling the always-on display, you get the option to either do a clock, a calendar, or an image. The images are kind of crappy, and you can't change them. But it will always be on. And they say that this is because that a lot of battery life is lost because people constantly pull their phone out to check the time because they don't wear watches. And so by leaving the screen on all of the time with the clock, that you're potentially saving battery from having to light up the entire display. Since it's an AMOLED, it only has to light up the pixels that it's using.
Gotcha.
So it has been an annoyance though. I'm kind of just using the Edge one for the nightstand mode because otherwise I'll see my phone and oh no, I'm losing battery life. I've been conditioned to turn my phone screen off.
Interesting perspective.
So so seeing the clock on there just irks me. I'm like, I have to turn it off.
Now, speaking with the screen too, I read online that this one has 855 nits, which is pretty much the brightest industry-leading brightness that you can get on a phone right now, and it has industry-leading color accuracy. Would you say that it's comparable with the Note 5 or no?
No. In fact, I'll show you right here. If I just pull up Google Now, which has very white background.
Yeah.
This is something that I noticed was that the Note 5 has a more red. It kind of hues red, while as the S7 goes more green.
It does, yeah.
So these are both in the same exact setting. They have the vibrance mode and the theater mode and all of those things that Samsung has. But yeah, you get used to it. You don't really notice, but when you put them side by side, it's apparent that the Note 5 was a little bit more red.
Okay, gotcha. And how does it do outside?
Outside, it's about the same. I mean, it's a very glossy display. They're both very bright. If I crank these up to the brightest settings, they're quite comparable.
Okay.
I would say that the S7 seems ever so slightly more, but that could also be because of the contrast. And lastly on the display, this is a weird one, but if you're going to be typing on this, here we go, hello world, the way that you end up holding it, you notice that
oh, that's so weird.
my hands are like right up on the keys, and so because it warps around the edges, you end up mistyping a little bit. So I would say definitely put it in a case.
Okay, cool.
Because that's a really weird one to get used to because you have to like change the way that you're used to holding a phone. You can't like grasp it unless you put it in a case.
That's so weird. So I know that you've been keeping this in a case for most of the part, so I won't let you break it. But lastly, I did want to ask you about VR, since we pretty much covered all the features except for that.
Right. So that was the major. I think this is the major reason why Samsung didn't put a USB Type-C connector in the phone.
Oh,
they even said like, oh well, the mainstream isn't ready for Type-C, and it's like, no, we're ready. We'll buy the cable. It's no big deal. Although I will say I'm just happy because this is like the last moment in my life for many years now to come where all of my devices are micro. When we went from mini USB to micro USB, it was like, anyway, now is the last moment, and it is micro USB. And part of the reason for that is that both the S7 Edge and the S7 work with the Gear VR, and this is the production edition of the Gear VR. So it just, you just slip it in there. It's got a little caddy where it pops into the micro USB, it clips on, and then you can get your Uber dork factor in VR.
Goodness.
And it feels exactly the same as the Note 5.
Cool.
So now there's, what is it, the Note 5, the S6, the X6 Edge, the S7, and the S7 Edge. So there's 5 phones that work with the Gear VR.
So if anybody else out there currently has an older generation of the Note platforms, or even one of the older I guess it would be Galaxy platforms, would you say that it's worth upgrading?
I don't know. If I had an S6, I'm not sure. I mean, unless I really needed the CPU.
But you're coming from 2 generations.
The major reasons for me to upgrade were just the storage and the camera.
Okay.
The camera was really a nicety. It was mainly the storage. And so it's an expensive upgrade to just go to the storage, which is why I'll be definitely selling the Note 5.
Yeah.
But it's an incremental upgrade.
Okay.
The build quality is the same as the S6. So if you're not running out of storage, maybe you can skip a generation. But otherwise, I mean, overall, I'm pretty happy with it.
I'm pretty happy with my 6P, so I will probably stick with my Nexus for the time being and get rid of my Note 4, because that thing is so sluggish at the moment. It's definitely not as fast as the S7 Edge. Thank you for chatting with me about the S7 Edge. It was awesome to have you on TekThing.
Hey, thanks for having me on the TekThing. This is really fun. It's a nice studio you have here.
So what's coming up on the Hack 5s I hear about?
Oh, on the Hack 5 show, we're doing a bunch of stuff on building drones. My co-host there is doing a lot of soldering, and we're learning how to build quadcopters that are under 250 grams, which is what I like to call the fun zone, because you don't need to get yourself some registration from the FAA to go flying through the trees.
And where can people find everything that you do?
HAK5.org or youtube.com/hack5. Scroll to the bottom, you'll find video blogs from myself as well as some Shannon Morse Girl.
There's a unicorn that poops rainbows, not gonna lie.
Wouldn't know anything about those graphics.
And of course, if you have any questions for Darren or for myself regarding Android phones, if you want to know more about the S7 Edge or what I will potentially upgrade to in the future, you can always email me ask@tekthing.com. See, I'm on here with you, and I'm saying the Hack 5 email, ask@tekthing.com, or you can tweet @tekthing on Twitter. We'll be right back. 3 questions answered, 3 tips, 3 reviews, all in 3 minutes, and this week, we've got 3 questions for Mr. Patrick Norton. Are you ready, sir?
I'm ready.
Yes, go! Starting with number 1, this is from @Mr. Nick Murphy on Twitter. He says, @TekThing, hey folks, I'm done with inkjets. Can you recommend a good value color laser printer? Thanks, from Nick.
So I personally keep a black and white laser printer because for a time I was doing a ton of black and white printing. And
Couponing, yes, me too.
It was very economical. But 99% of the time in my house I use an Epson Artisan all-in-one. Or we actually, I have access to the EcoTank that Epson sent us for testing a while back, which is fantastic because it has the big giant bulk ink canisters without the crazy Rube Goldberg thing I bought off of Amazon.com. That said, I can totally see where you might be done with inkjets in general, because ink's expensive. Ink tanks, you may not be over it. You may not have seen
ink is bad for the environment.
I don't know about that, but watch the cost of toner cartridges and the speed on super cheap laser printers. That said, a very popular item is HP's LaserJet M252 DW wireless printer, $224, 4.5 stars on Amazon Prime. It's nice. It's got wireless Ethernet USB. Text will look outstanding. Like most, modestly priced color laser printers, photos are just going to be okay. That's pretty normal. PC Mag's David Stone, who's been testing printers forever, gave it an editor's choice from PC Magazine. He knows his printers, and if he says thumbs up, it should be solid. And 231 customer reviews for a product like this is pretty solid. And HP does drivers for every frickin' operating system on the planet, pretty much forever. And that's a good thing.
All right. And number 2 is from @KetchupFingers. He tweets, @TekThing, will you guys update to 2160p or 1440p on YouTube in the near future? I may be in the minority, but it would be very cool.
2160,
very expensive.
Yeah, well, 2160p, aka 4K UHD, is not in our plans anytime soon. We would need new cameras, a new deck for switching. We'd quadruple the size of the downloads, and most folks can't really play it yet. Ask us in 3 or 4 years. As far as 1440p, aka WXGA, aka 2560 by 1440, which is my favorite reasonably priced desktop monitor size right now, because 4K monitors are expensive when they're really nice. Okay, feel free to send in your links to inexpensive 4K monitors. We'll talk about that next week. But 1440p is 16 by 9, so our video should scale quite nicely onto that screen.
Yay!
Yay!
And next up is from Kwekwe Karu. I hope I said your name right, at Mad Mohawk Films. He said, at TekThing, Raspberry Pi 3 plus HiFiBerry plus screen to make a DAP?
DAP.
DAP, yeah.
DAP, digital audio player. So I'd say yes, except you don't actually need the screen.
Oh.
Although I'm playing around with doing a portable DAP with Raspberry Pi. Well, let me roll back. First of all, Raspberry Pi 2, more than enough performance to be a digital audio player.
Yeah.
What you are going to need, like you mentioned, is some way to get better audio. The audio on board the Raspberry Pi is kind of stinky. It's audio. If you want audio that'll actually do justice to your FLAC files, something like the HiFiBerry DAC Plus is just the thing. It has fantastic Burr Brown DACs, which are actually really, really good. The light version of it has ESS Sabre DACs, which are really, really nice too. Not as nice as the Burr Browns, I suppose. But I suggest you bolt it all together with something called Volumio. I've talked about this in a couple different places, probably here actually, which is a Raspberry Pi distro, and it's available actually for a bunch of other devices, including the Qbox, the Qbox One, the Udo, the BeagleBone Black, the CompuLab, blah, 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 blah. So basically, this is a custom Linux distro that turns a Raspberry Pi-like board into an audiophile grade music player.
Okay.
It's really, really cool. The nice thing about the PiHats is they don't have any USB audio issues. You know, Rune Audio, by the way, which Volumio and Rune Audio are like a split, a fork.
Okay.
Which, if you're in Linux, you know exactly what that means. But yeah, Raspberry Pi 2 or Raspberry Pi 3 with a HiFiBerry PiHats. I've used a bunch of different USB adapters. Some of them have issues and create sort of metallic groaning noise, which apparently is due to excess traffic over the USB bus.
Okay.
I've had good luck with the Audioquest Dragonfly, which sounds fantastic. But that's one of the nice things about using PiHats. The PiHats are basically the little things that plug onto the board, like the HiFiBerry. Use the Pi I2S integrated interchip sound, which is essentially a serial interface that runs over the GPIO pins and just do audio, which is probably the best way to go.
Awesome.
Was that 3 minutes?
I kind of want to do that. I think it was close.
Well, that's what I had running in the warehouse for a while, and then I ended up taking it home. So.
Awesome. Well, of course, if you guys have any picks, you can always email us, ask@tekthing.com, and we will be right back. Okay, I don't have a viewer answer and question right here, but I do have a random pro tip because I thought this was kind of awesome. So I ran into a kind of a problem a couple of weeks ago. I've been doing these Snubs Report vlogs from my home studio recently, and I use this 64 gig SDXC card for the files in my camera. So I would try to transfer them to my computer with the built-in SD port on my PC, and it gave me an error telling me that I needed to reformat the card because it was only seeing like 27 gigs or something like that. So I thought, of course, I was freaking out. My card and my files are corrupted. I lost all my video files, but it turned out to be a really easy fix. So SD cards come in 3 different generations. There's SD, which is up to 4 gigs. Then there's SDHC, which is 4 to 32 gigs. And then there's SDXC, which is 64 gigs up to 128 gigs. So my card port in my PC only recognizes up to 32 gigs. So it doesn't know what SDXC is. So it wasn't future-proof, but if I had a regular SD4 gig, it would be backwards compatible. So what I ended up having to do was simply buy this little, it's basically like a little port.
USB 3.0 card reader.
Yeah, it's a little card reader for my SD cards, and I just plug it into my 3.0 USB port on my computer, and now it works just fine. I didn't lose any of my files on my larger SDXC memory card.
It was funny, when the transition from compact flash, which looks huge especially compared to a micro SD card.
Yeah.
You know, compact flash carried the controller on board, micro SD, the controller for, it's basically just dumb memory, and the controllers in the device. And so the device became the gateway to how large of an SD card you could use, which can be incredibly frustrating. If you want to get feral and nerd out on SD cards, go to sdcard.org. It's the SD Association. They have more information than you ever wanted on SD card space.
Oh man, that site is so interesting.
Measurements. Well, you know what else they have? It's unbelievably useful. is the SD card formatter. If you ever have a device, so SD Association's SD card formatter is free and it's incredibly useful. If you have multiple devices that you swap cards between and one can read them and one the other one, and then you go to put it in your Windows box and it's like, oh, there's only 2 megabytes here, the SD card formatter will wipe it out. Just make sure you have the information off it that you need before you wipe it out.
So very, very useful.
It is free, it is useful, and I thank the SD Card Association for making it available.
Yes.
Because I used to have to like run to a Linux box to wipe out SD cards because nothing else would touch them, which was immensely frustrating. John writes in, hey Patrick and Shannon, in a few short months I will be going on my first overseas trip to Japan. Woohoo! And couldn't be more excited. What I'm not excited about is capturing this awesome trip solely with the camera on my phone. My only experience with cameras in the past has been with basic point and shoots with non-removable lenses. I'm turning to you good folks with the hopes of getting some advice on places to rent cameras online, as well as recommendations on a camera to take. The camera doesn't have to necessarily be a point and shoot as long as it's fairly easy to use, lightweight, and has a good zoom. Thanks for all the advice and love seeing the Patreon notifications about new episodes. John in Houston, Texas.
Can you see why I chose this one?
I can totally see why. I just want to say one thing first. If you're going for a week, rent the camera for 2 weeks the week before, because there's nothing worse than being like, okay, the really cool thing's happening in front of the temple, and okay, I found the setting. Oh, they're done.
Yeah.
You know, or you know what I mean? Don't learn.
You'll probably just get in trouble for keeping it for way too long over your rental time. But yeah, so I
rented for 2 weeks instead of renting it for 1 week.
Absolutely, so. Especially if you need to get it shipped to you and then you're traveling, so it'll keep you stress free. I'm also curious. This is off topic, but when are you heading there? Because I'm going in May, and I was thinking about having a meetup maybe in the Tokyo area. So if anybody is interested and you live in Japan, let me know. Just tweet me or something. And John, thank you so much for being a patron. That's super, super, super awesome. So thank you.
While we're off topic, if you're going to be at Can Jam in Southern California, March 19th and 20th, let us know, because I'll be down there listening to all the headphones.
Yay!
All the headphones.
So I would definitely rent one before heading to Japan, not in Japan, just in case there's price differences, which is entirely possible. There are several good sites to rent from. Many of these we mentioned in a previous episode when somebody asked about like try before you buy as far as cameras goes. There is borrowlenses.com. There's also lensrentals.com, which a ton of my friends in the podcasting business have recommended to me. And there's also lensprotogo.com. So all three of these are highly recommended from a lot of my friends. I have been shooting with the Sony a7R II lately. I absolutely love the thing. It is very expensive, so if you wanted to rent it, that would be a very, very good option. This camera, it is a mirrorless, but it does require lenses. So I would say take 2 lenses if you wanted to go towards this kind of route. I would recommend taking 1 lens for things like portraits. So you could do a 55mm or something like a 16 to 35mm lens with a low aperture. Less than 2.0 aperture is best, so that those bring in really good lighting, and they also take excellent depth of field. So you get really, really nice portraits. And then you would want to get something like a zoom lens for getting pictures of landscapes and faraway animals. So I use one that zooms to 240mm and has an aperture of 3.5 to 6.3. So it's not the most amazing thing on the planet.
But it's a good outdoor in the sunshine lens.
Yeah, it's perfect for that kind of stuff.
And the prime lens will do good when you're indoors, especially you'll find yourself in Japan, you'll be like Akihabara, you'll turn a corner and you'll see like, oh, there's the guy that sells resistors. And he has tubs of resistors and they're all clean and they're organized.
Oh, I can't wait to see those.
You're going to freak. And then you'll turn another corner and it'll be completely like, this guy deals with new old stock vintage 300B. It's just, and then there's the temples and the culture and the mayhem and the streets. And Japan is one giant never ending photo opportunity.
I'm going to pretty much have my camera out of my pocket the entire time. So if you also want to go with a point and shoot, I have had a lot of luck with the Sony CyberShot line of cameras. There's plenty of them in the line. All of them are very, very good. They are much smaller, they're portable, they fit in your back pocket, which is really cool. And they also have zooms on them. They work really, really well in low light conditions, which will make temples that are open at night, bar settings if you feel like going to a ramen bar. So you could take pictures of those kind of things really, really easily with those little CyberShot cameras. So yeah, I've been brainstorming these same type of scenarios as you have, because the Tokyo trip that I'm going to make and Kyoto is going to be amazing. So I want to make sure I get the perfect pictures of those temples. Let me know which ones you prefer, which ones you choose. I know I'm kind of Sony biased because I have Sony cameras, so that's what I'm experienced with.
I mean,
but Panasonic, Lumix are really good cameras too.
I mean, Canon does good cameras, Nikon does good cameras. Don't be tempted to go for the biggest, latest megapixels, because a lot of times when they increase the density of the sensor, that decreases the light sensitivity or the low light performance. Man, I would almost say just buy an inexpensive pocket camera, because you really do, if you don't have time to get used to the whole sort of aiming and focusing, I mean, I'm with Shannon, leave it on automatic.
Oh yeah, just leave the thing on automatic and let it do its thing, because a lot of these
emails
newer cameras,
from angry photographic geniuses in the audience, which is great.
But
Send us your tips.
If you're not a photography expert, just leave the thing on automatic and then experiment.
Yeah.
Like that's how I learned what aperture and what shutter speed are, is just by leaving it on automatic, and now and then when I feel like experimenting and trying a picture with a bunch of different settings, I go through them. And that really helped me understand what I'm doing with photography. And now I use Lightroom.
Yeah, well, it's funny, but it's amazing also if you don't have the money to carry or are worried about carrying multiple lenses. It's amazing what just backing up and getting close will do.
Absolutely.
Everything a zoom lens will do with a lot fewer issues.
Yep,
so.
it's true.
Never use digital zoom.
I'm so excited for you. I hope you have an awesome time, and if you have time, you could rent several different cameras, try them out for a week, and then send them back until you find one that you absolutely prefer. So I hope you have an awesome time in Japan. It'll be so much fun.
Me too. Remember, once in a while, put down the phone, step away from the screen, close the laptop, and do something analog like Snubs has been doing.
Hi! Watashi wa Amerikajin desu.
Learning a new language. Oh my goodness. I'm Patrick Norton.
Watashi wa Shannon desu.
We'll see you next week on TekThing.
Sayonara!
Moshi moshi! Oh,
Jane!
that's when you walk into the sushi
Moshi
bar.
moshi!
Got to email tekthing@hack5.org or hack5@threatwire.net.
You can go now.
Okay.
You jerk.
I made you laugh. Tschüss! And that's pretty much all.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for watching the show, and thank you for supporting us on Patreon. If you are not on this list, you can join it by going over to patreon.com/TekThing. Thank you.
So we turned the corner. We're driving through Oakland with the kids on the wandering around, and we turned the corner, and there was a guy teaching a kid how to use a katana.
What?
Yeah, like
That's
samurai.
so weird.
Like a dude and
Just
a kid.
randomly?
Just randomly. Turn a corner. And what was funny is we'd actually seen the guy with the swords jogging